This is the second part of a two-part series from TomTalks, Damming of the Nile. We start with a comparative discussion on U.S. and Egyptian water management. We have similar challenges here. The Colorado River, for example, our namesake, here in Colorado, it flows to 40 million people and 7 states and Mexico. And, it would be too easy for us to think of it as just a Colorado or a localized benefit. It is something that we as upstream users are obligated to take care of well and steward for those 40 million people, many of whom are across an international border. So, we see these conflicts, both historical but also present day, in the region, in Ethiopia, Egypt, Sudan, and the 11 other countries that you mentioned, Nihal. What can they learn from us, and what can we learn from them when it comes to dealing with transboundary water issues?
I'll start on that at least and let the experts there go further. I'm really glad you brought up the Colorado River as an example, because that river has something like 15 dams on it from its source to the time it reaches Mexico, which I put in parentheses because it doesn't always reach Mexico. And I think, to me, that's a really great example of what's going on. As you look at the number of dams we've put on there and the flood control that it's provided and the reservoir of water that's provided, but it's also, we're taking water out of that river, and we're now dealing with drought conditions, and there is less water going through. And how many years just in the last 20 has the water from the Colorado River actually reached Mexico? I mean, it's a limited number. And you look at something like the Glen Canyon Dam, where environmental groups have sued to get that dam demolished because they're basically making the statement that in our current conditions, we're never going to have the necessary amount of water in that reservoir to really serve the purposes that supposedly it was needed for. And that's, a pretty scary thought when I think about my compatriots in Egypt, and, what is that going to look like for them as you add yet another dam. And I know that every dam is built with the best of intentions and the highest of hopes, but the reality is often kind of disheartening.
Mm. Yeah, Forrest or Nihal, what would you say about these challenges and opportunities to learn from different regions and their water management?
The lessons that have to be learned, that people have to come to table, they have to sit together, they have to find, as we say, middle solutions, and find things. Because I have heard an Ethiopian official saying, well, in Egypt you have these golf playgrounds or whatever you say, and do you know how much water does it require to maintain them? We don't have electricity around here, and this is a very good argument. I mean, but the idea whether someone owns this or does not own this is the question around here. Whether you are on the source, on the beginning of the source, means that you own it or not. But I think this was an opportunity for Egyptians to realize that this water is not given. They have to use it in a more wise way. To go back to the idea of finding wells, they are doing a lot of projects now for the small rivers around it to make the water flow better. And as I said, they have changed the schedules and the plans for the types of crops to grow. Of course, there is a lot of awareness going through several years back about the use of water. The desalinization of water have to come on table, and how are we going to use it? And look at around the African countries. The African file has been a critical file on the Egyptian table for several years now, that Egypt has to consider that Africa needs a lot of development, and Egypt here will play a role to help the surrounding countries. But the idea that each one will say that this is the only solution that I accept, and I think that up till now they have sat on the table several times and they ended up with the idea of finding a rate for filling up the reservoir or the Renaissance Dam in another way, in a slower pace, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And let's hope that no one tries to signal the idea of war, because it will be a catastrophe for everyone around.
Yeah. So, Forrest, you are just getting started in your academic career, well, continuing, let's say, but really have made a life decision to focus on this region. Water is going to be key, not only historically and now, but more and more so in the future. What orientation, having focused on that as a documentary filmmaker, what orientation will that have in your studies as you move forward, a focus on water?
Well, I think it's going to be a huge focus moving forward, especially as climate change starts, the tolls of climate change starts to ramp up. In Egypt, and especially in Northern Africa, I think that as climate change, as the world gets hotter, things are going to get worse for the water, and the ability to supply water and the ability for governments to use water is going to be much less, because of the annual rainfall is going to become much less. So I think that just underscores the need for these governments to work together. And I think that what Nihal was saying, that it's a challenge because these are separate nations. It's not like it's in the United States. They're not states in the same nation. They're separate nations, so they have separate needs, separate peoples. So it is a challenge, but I think that it's something that they have to do, because war is not, I mean, it's not an option, shouldn't be an option, and it'll just lead to more pain in the end.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good place to end on, a bit of optimism toward being able to collaborate and work together. The path will present challenges, but as we've all suggested, an ability to bring people to the table, no matter if we're talking about in the United States and it's a variety of US states and neighboring countries, or if it's in the Middle East with multiple countries involved there. Well, thank you all. I know we've just scraped the surface on this, but it is a topic that we'll continue and revisit as the dam continues to fill. So Sean, Forrest, Nihal, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Great being here.
My pleasure.
All right.